Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm delighted to acknowledge the presence of my distinguished former colleague in the Cabinet and the National Assembly and the Chairman of Pakistan People's Party, Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, and of course another very valued colleague, Ms. Hina Rabbani Khar, who has been the Foreign Minister and currently chairs the National Assembly Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs. My dear friend Ata Tarar is not momentarily here, but thank you, Mr. Tarar, for this kind invitation, and of course my appreciation to Institute of Regional Studies and Ambassador George Salim for always dragging me to these things in which I'm a willing victim. Ladies and gentlemen, I begin by quoting the American writer Henry Thoreau, who said that the life in us is like the water in the river. The life in us is like the water in the river, and therefore I'm here to argue for living rivers. And I'm also here to prosecute those who threaten a civilization, who have contempt for international law, and who choke rivers to punish and coerce humanity. And what I'm prosecuting today is that India has weaponized water. What does this mean? We have heard from more than one distinguished panelists that on 25th of April 2025, India unilaterally put in abeyance the Indus Waters Treaty, a treaty that has survived four full-scale wars and 65 years of unbroken enmity between two nuclear power neighbors. So the treaty has some resilience, had some resilience until it was put into abeyance, which Mr. Sufi has told us is a legally meaningless concept because it doesn't exist in the treaty. But they didn't just put the treaty in abeyance, ladies and gentlemen. After the abeyance came the threats. And I want to quote exactly what was said. The Indian Water Minister said, "We will ensure that not a single drop of Indus water flows into Pakistan." The Interior Minister, Amit Shah, said a month later, "No, Indus Waters Treaty will never be restored." Mr. Patil, Mr. Shah's boss, Prime Minister Modi, first said in 2016, has repeated since, and Professor Zigo quoted it, that blood and water cannot flow together. But they didn't just make the threats once. They have repeated the threat. The Water Minister, Mr. Patil, has repeated this, and External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has very recently confirmed what the Interior Minister said, that Indus Waters Treaty will not be restored. And to those who said that India hasn't acted on its threat, I have only one slide, if you can put this on, of a list of actions that India has taken, if the computer guy is awake. Otherwise, I will just read out what is there. The next one, please. Next slide. Yes. So this is a list of actions to answer those that India hasn't said or done anything since it put the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance. That was on April 23rd, 2025. In the next 2 days, India cut off all hydrological data and flood warnings. Then it went on in which it announced a three-pronged water denial strategy for all western rivers. And on May 4th and 5th, ladies and gentlemen, I think it is worth paying some attention to, the Baglihar dam gates were closed, which reduced flow in the Chenab River by 90%. I think it was mentioned earlier. Also, on May the 5th, the Salal dam gets closed. In May 2025, again on the Chenab, they flushed the reservoir. Then it goes on and on. But the important thing is that India has, in the last year, has continued to take actions to stop and divert Pakistan's water in the western rivers. It continues to make threatening remarks and for a very real effect, I think we can see the August-September 2025 incident when its dam gates were released without advance notice on the eastern rivers which is Ravi, Chenab, and Sutlej, and nearly 4.7 million Pakistanis were affected by that flood when those rivers were opened without warning. So India has acted on its threat, and the same incident that I just quoted when India decided to stop the flow of water on the Chenab River, a senior Indian government official told the Indian Express newspaper, and again I want to be precise in quoting that official, unnamed Indian official, he said that this stopping the flow of water was, and I quote, a punitive action. By doing this, even if the choke is for a short while, we demonstrate that we will take coercive steps. The Chenab River irrigates Punjab farmlands, and Pakistan needs to realize we mean to punish them on all fronts. So this is the policy of the government of India. Choke, punish, coerce. And punishing and coercing the human beings who drink from these rivers and the flora and fauna irrigated by these rivers. 200 million people choked, punished, and coerced, not for what they did, but for what their government is accused of without any evidence. The Indian Home Minister, I want to complete his remarks, because he did not even bother with euphemism. After declaring that India will never restore the Indus Waters Treaty, he continued on, he said, and I quote, "We will take water that was flowing to Pakistan to Rajasthan by constructing a canal, and Pakistan will be starved of water that it has been getting unjustifiably." So it is his word, starved. So the government of India has declared publicly and starkly its intention to starve a neighboring population of water. And ladies and gentlemen, let that sit beside the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which recognizes water as a fundamental human right. Let it sit beside the Geneva Conventions. Let it sit beside every principle of civilized international conduct that humanity has built at such terrible cost over the last century. So Pakistan's legal position in this case is not merely strong, it is grounded unassailably in international law and has been expressed trenchantly by speakers in this session. But I just want to quote one sentence from the Court of Arbitration in its finding in June 2025. It said the treaty does not provide for unilateral abeyance and reaffirmed its jurisdiction. India's response that it declared the court illegal and refused to participate. Ladies and gentlemen, here is what is to note, that when a state loses the legal argument and responds by disavowing the court, the state has confessed its own guilt. And then what to note is the Article 62 of the Vienna Convention, which states that political tensions, including terrorism, do not constitute a fundamental change of circumstances that alters the treaty's water-sharing purpose. And I think this was said most clearly by the International Court of Justice in its 1997 Gabčíkovo-Nagymoroš judgment on the rights to waters of the Danube between Hungary and Slovakia. If you'll put on the previous slide, please. Piछली slide pe le jaएं. Yeah. So this is actually a very relevant case, the Gabčíkovo-Nagymoroš judgment, because it's almost maps precisely to what is Pakistan's case. But it's not just this case. There's also the UN Waters Convention of 1997, which mandates equitable and reasonable utilization and no significant harm. India's weaponization of water could also amount to collective punishment against international humanitarian law. It is prohibited under the Geneva Conventions. And the threat of mass starvation, that's why the words are important, because the threat of mass starvation is potentially a crime against humanity under the Rome Statute. The Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Ishaq Dar, said recently that 17 projects by India in the Indus River system would give New Delhi the tools for hydro hegemony. So Pakistan's case is made. The verdict, under any honest reading of international law, is already written. India stands condemned. But, ladies and gentlemen, I want to go beyond the legal, because the law ultimately is the floor of our obligations to one another. It is not the ceiling. India putting the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance is not attacking merely a document. It is not attacking a bureaucratic arrangement, which you can say the Indus Waters Commission is a bureaucratic arrangement. What India is attacking is a living basin of rivers upon which 200 million Pakistanis depend for their lives. So these are not abstract statistics. These are farmers in Punjab whose wheat feeds a nation. These are mothers in Sindh whose children drink from channels fed by Himalayan rivers hundreds miles away. These are fishermen whose entire livelihood is built around the river. The great Yale professor, James Scott, wrote last year in a book that he published that rivers on a long view are alive. They are born, they change, they shift their channels, they forge new routes to the sea, they move both gradually and violently, they can teem with life, they may die a quasi-natural death, they are frequently maimed and even murdered. Maimed and murdered. I do not think Professor Scott used those words lightly. And what we have seen in the same year that he published his book, that when India threatens to throttle the Indus system, it does not merely violate a treaty, it is a murder threat. By murdering a river basin, India's armed hand transgresses into millions of Pakistani houses and pulls the trigger. The Cambridge scholar Robert Macfarlane also argues that rivers are alive. And he cites Canada, where rivers have been recognized legally as living beings. But the case that is, I think, most intriguing was the 2017 Te Awa Tupua Act in New Zealand, which recognized the Wanganui River as not only alive, but a legal person, giving it the same legal standing as citizen. Professor Macfarlane insists that we stop using the word "it" for rivers, because he believes that that mode of address reduces rivers to the status of objects and mere stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, the Indus is not stuff. The Chenab is not stuff. The Jhelum is not stuff. The rivers of the Indian Basin are not stuff. They are the soul of our soil. So I address and conclude by calling upon the citizens of the world who believe in international law. Pakistan calls upon the international community that every state that has signed the UN Charter, every institution that claims to uphold the law of nations, to act, and to act by holding India accountable. Let the believers in international law uphold and defend the principle that water cannot be weaponized, that water treaties cannot be dissolved by the stronger party because the mood suits them, that 200 million Pakistani lives are not bargaining chips. The Indus has flowed for 10,000 years. It has nurtured the Indus Valley civilization, which is one of the oldest and most sophisticated human societies ever to grace the earth. The Indus Valley civilization came into being and flourished long before Delhi or any other capital existed. So Professor Scott understood something that India's warmongers do not. A river is not a pipe. You cannot turn it on and off as political theater demands. And as Mr. Sufi told us so ably, there are no titles to rivers. The Indus Basin rivers do not belong to India. The rivers belong to the millions of lives they sustain, and not just human life. Our understanding of rivers must expand to encompass their entirety and the deep geology, from tributaries, wetlands, floodplains, backwaters, eddies, marshlands, Sindh's mangroves, to the entire assemblage of life forms, the fish and the silt and the reed beds and the migratory beds dependent upon the rivers for their existence. Ladies and gentlemen, India cannot put any river in abeyance. It cannot hold water hostage. It cannot starve its civilization into compliance. It cannot rivers as weapons, because the Indus and the Jhelum and the Chenab are alive. And India is trying to kill these living beings. And Pakistan has decided, we will protect our rivers. We will protect life and civilization. Ladies and gentlemen, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah built a nation on this soil. But our rivers have are writing this moment, and will write this soil's autobiography with their flow. So I urge the world, let them flow. Our people and their armed forces have defended this soil in 4 wars. We will fight hegemony in all forms, hydro or otherwise. And we will fight this war on this soil if need be, but we seek peace. And we will take our case in the international courts and councils. We will take our case for water and life in the court of world opinion. And we will take our case for water and life to the souls of conscientious citizens everywhere, until weaponization of water is condemned and outlawed, international law is restored, and justice flows as freely as the rivers that nurture the Indus civilization. Let them flow. Thank you very much. Pakistan Pindawad.